This week, we want to address conversation style and communication style that creates a lot of frustration.
Yes, we hate it. We hate it in other people, that
We,
is.
yeah, we hate it in other people, that is. And, since you interrupted me, Laura, why don't you go ahead and introduce it because you seem to be so good at this?
Well, this week we've been talking, in our weekly newsletter and on Facebook all about passive aggressive communication style. And
Passive aggressive communication
yeah,
style. Yeah,
don't like it.
I can already tell it's getting under your skin here a little bit, right?
Right. Yep.
Yeah, you always seem to have the best facial expressions. One of the ways that we could look at this passive aggressive communication style starts out in a simple conversation that I'm sure a lot of you couples have had. It goes something like this. Where would you like to go to dinner tonight?
Oh, I don't care. You pick.
I'm thinking Thai.
Mm, I really don't.
Hmm. Pizza?
Actually, just for lunch. More. Yeah.
Mm. That burger place that we saw in the magazine that we talked about going to, that cheeseburger. Remember that picture of that?
Ah, but so late. A burger that kind of heavy and not feeling a
Mm.
burger either.
You're so fun on date nights. No wonder I look forward to them.
Well, how about we go to Breadco?
Fredco, you always know how to pick the best places.
I'm good with that.
You get the hint. Passive aggressive communication styles that start out in something so simple as a couple trying to decide where they're going to go in dinner.
And instead of just coming right out and saying what it is that you want to do or don't want to do, you just go through that exercise of frustration.
And I think that's an important piece to mention, Laura, is that it is an exercise in frustration and futility because as we were playing around here with each other, both of us were showing up in a certain way. And it seems that as it continued to go, the sarcasm and the bitey behaviors were increasing a little bit.
Mm.
Now, in all fairness, as Laura and I have gotten to know more about our communication styles, I know that my wife does not appreciate Thai me. That's one of those secret things that I save after a long cycling trip. I love to go eat Thai food. It's sort of like my reward. But in all fairness to her, if she were to send it my way and say, well, why don't you pick tonight? You know, and I know that you will preface it by saying anywhere but
But
Thai
right,
or anywhere but pizza.
right. If I'm
That's
not feeling pizza,
if
I'll
you're
say it
not
up
feeling
front.
pizza, you're going to say it up front. And hey, here's a little secret. You know what always breaks the tie for us? Mexican.
Right.
It
It
wins.
definitely
It
does.
wins single
Yeah.
every single time. We know that if we're not hitting a home run, that's where we're going to go to our favorite Mexican restaurant and say hi to our favorite folks that we
Right.
see.
But passive aggressive communication can show up not just between couples, right? It can show up in our relationships with our parents, our adult kids, siblings, even coworkers, friends, any relationship, right?
It really can because it is connected to our interpersonal interactions and it's a way of having conflict, but it's in a way that doesn't get the results that we're looking. And the thing that makes this communication style so frustrating is that we're indirectly expressing our frustration.
Mm. Mhm.
Now, we know in relationships that we can become irritated with our partner. And in a healthy relationship that has open and honest communication, it's okay to express that statement that you said is really frustrating me, or I'm reacting in a certain way to what you've been saying. And that's perfectly okay. But the passive aggressive approach would be get up from the couch, to go into the kitchen and to start slamming cabinets.
Right. Or the silent treatment, you know, not saying anything, and the other person's just left trying to guess what in the world they did to
Yeah.
offend the other person, or shows up as sarcasm, right? Like, well, I guess nobody else around here knows how to take out the trash but me.
Does anyone around here care about how the house looks? Yeah, I think one of the things you mentioned that might be worth sort of going back on and looking at is talking about the silent treatment. And we talk about stonewalling being a part of the passive aggressive domain. I think it's also good to understand that a person can stonewall because of a fight flight response. And sometimes that happens because they go silent because they're being flooded with emotion and they don't really know how to respond. So I just want to sort of make that clear that some folks don't have the right words at the moment. And one of the good antidotes for stonewalling, be able to soothe yourself and to then have the opportunity to go back and revisit that conversation. So just because someone may go silent and leave the room may be a sign that they're getting flooded with emotion, or
Mhm.
they just may sit there and become silent and they can't move because they're frozen.
Right. But I
Okay.
think you know that somebody is deliberately doing it in a passive aggressive way when it's just, so intentional. The typical, being sullen.
Folding the
So,
arms,
yeah.
being
Mhm.
sullen, the
Right.
the the
Hmm.
eyebrow raises, the
Yeah.
eye rolls, that could all be part
Right.
of it too. But I think the other part too, there's an aggressive part to
Hmm.
that, which means there's movement sort of going on
Right.
within the room. It's just you're indirectly expressing your frustration. One of the ways that it shows up is in procrastination.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Like promise somebody you're going to do something. You just keep putting it off and putting it off. And it's because you really did not want to do it. But instead of saying it up front, you just are passive aggressively not doing.
Exactly. And of course, this could manifest in behaviors like being late for events,
Mm-hmm.
um, being late for meetings,
Right.
being late with deadlines.
So frustrating.
Yeah, it is
Yes.
so
Mhm.
frustrating. Especially the frustrating part comes when the time was agreed upon prior. And as we know, things can happen, traffic can happen, something can happen before you're getting out the door. But the assertive person would tend to take that one step further and communicate intentionally about the progress, what they're experiencing, and when they hope to arrive. The passive aggressive person really may see this as a power play and to say, I've got some control here, and this
Mhm.
is the way that I'm going to manifest my
Right. I
control.
can make you wait.
I can make
Mhm.
you wait for me
Mhm.
because I'm going to exploit your value.
Right.
And
Mhm.
that's, of course, when it can come across and be sort of a characterological issue with the person themselves. What about having selective memory or guilt tripping?
Mm, definitely that's passive aggressive. Not remembering something that the other person just knows they absolutely remember. So
Yeah.
frustrating.
Sort of like blow you off or minimize it
Mhm.
or avoid it. When did I ever tell you that?
Right.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And there are times that we do miscommunicate.
Hmm. Or just absolutely, you know, leaving, say, a dirty pile of clothes right in the middle of the bed, as a hint, do your laundry instead
Mm,
of asking directly, hey, would you mind doing your laundry? It's really getting piled up in here.
yeah, very good. Being direct, being honest,
Mhm.
being open, and communicating in a way that makes the expectation clear to everyone involved.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's
So
very good.
that's how it looks. But tell us, how come people act like? Where does that come from?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, some of this could just be learned behavior. That could be part of it too. But I think a lot of it really comes down to fear. And really what's driving it is a fear of conflict. And as we work with couples, we discover that fear of conflict is huge.
Mm,
It's something that folks really avoid and go out of their way, and potentially because part of that is a misunderstanding about conflict. They probably confuse it with being combative. But conflict is, as I like to tell folks, it's a way of exchanging information and sharing different values and different points of view. And whether or not you elevate it to the level of combat is up to you.
mm,
And so I think a lot of times it does come out of a fear and a fear of assertiveness, but there could be something else involved in here too. Maybe there's discomfort in asking for what we need. And,
that makes
you know,
sense.
if you think about, there is some shame sometimes associated with needing something,
Yeah.
like asking for help is really hard for some folks. And I'll raise
Mhm.
my hand on that too. I like to think, well, I'll figure this out and I'll do it on my own. And there's times that you just can't. You have to stop and you have to ask for help. But there could be another way of looking at this. What if the individual is not accustomed to getting their needs met by another?
Mm,
In other words, what if they have been disappointed throughout life and they don't believe someone is there for them or someone can be available for them? And they've just not learned that just because perhaps your parents or perhaps your first marriage or some of the relationships you've had in life are not able to meet your needs doesn't mean that that's the case for everyone.
mm. So
So
it's the expectation that nobody's going to want something for you. So you're kind of asking for it in a back.
you're asking for it in an indirect way. You're asking
Yeah,
for it in an indirect way.
I see.
Like, I guess no one really cares what I've got to say.
Maybe we don't.
Maybe we don't. And maybe let's be honest, maybe we don't.
Right.
And maybe part of it could be the way that you're asking.
Mm, I see.
I mean, because we have to share the responsibility of asking in a way that perhaps opens ourselves to being heard and being taken seriously.
Mm,
I think there's this idea that floats around quite a bit. Well, I'm just being authentic. No, perhaps you're just being rude. And that could be part of it too, because an authentic person speaks from a sense of value. And we both value relationships. And because we value that, we want to be as upfront and honest with what we're asking for and not play a mind game that keeps the cycle of
mm,
conflict going.
right. I think, it's important to remember that we all can get passive aggressive. And so developing some self awareness and understanding what it can look like is important. So those things we can control, right? We can control our own behavior, but we can't control others. But when it's showing up in a relationship that we have, perhaps with our spouse or,
Mhm.
somebody else in our family, how do we deal with it with other?
Carefully, right? And we deal with it carefully. Sometimes we don't deal with it. Sometimes we're just so burned out that we don't think we have the capacity. But let's say that we're really invested and we're wanting to make some changes. I think you said it well that we cannot change another person, but I think that over time, and if the other person is willing, and we're at least trying to correct some of our communication styles, we can strike more toward influencing the other person. But our behavior is really important, how we do that, and our approach is important. So, one of the things that I would try to encourage another individual to do is work on their approach. Now, when I work with couples, this is something we work on in our sessions because we've captured that moment and we're able to put into effect some of the tools, if you will, to help, like learning to self-soothe, creating a safe space, and actually doing some coaching to open an individual up to be more upfront with what they're asking. But one of the things that I would say is like, let's start out with some gentleness and some kindness and talk about how you experience this,
Mhm.
but also talk about what you're needing and how you would like to see this different.
So
So
let's talk this through in a kind of a practical way. Let's say an individual is going around, let's use the slamming the cabinet doors or just the doors in general in the house and is clearly upset. What can the other person do?
just turn off the lights and go to bed.
Avoid, right?
Avoid, yeah,
Avoidance.
avoid it.
Always
And
helpful.
that always helps, and
Mhm.
let them slam the cabinets to their heart's content. In all seriousness, though, all joking aside, I think one of the things that would be helpful is to recognize and to verbalize what you're seeing the other person do. And it doesn't come across like, would you stop slamming these cabinets and talk to me?
Mhm.
Now, that's probably not going to get you too far. It might
Right.
get you into an argument.
Mhm.
Don't tell me what to do. These are my cabinets.
Right.
I think the best thing that we could do at that time is say, hey, Laura, seem to be a little bit upset. Is everything okay? And is there something that you think you would like to talk about?
Yeah. I'm noticing. I'm noticing
Yeah.
you're slamming the doors and I'm thinking that you're mad at me. Are you
Yeah.
mad at me?
I'm noticing, I'm
Right.
observing, this is what I'm experiencing. And if they say, no, I don't want to talk about it, say, well, maybe this is not a good time. But I think for the sake of us, it might be important we find a time. Is there some time this evening that you would like to talk? I certainly will be available if you'd like.
Mm.
That way, we're acknowledging the behavior. We're not forcing them into a situation. We're actually giving them space, but we're not letting off on the invitation that it's important that we do have that discussion because who knows? I mean, stimulus response, we're seeing the cabinets being shut. Our response could be, they're so upset with me. I know it's going to be about me. And our guilty conscience shows up and we create
Right.
these stories in our mind. It could have been the last email that your partner read before they left the office.
Mhm.
We really don't know what it is, but I think tuning into that and practicing that over time, gentleness and kindness, as John Gottman talks about, one of the four horsemen is criticism, lowering that criticism
Mhm.
and coming out in an open and an honest way over time. And I'm going to keep stressing over time.
Right.
If the person has not been used to you approaching them this way, they may not warm up to it immediately. But over time, especially if you as a couple have agreed on changing behaviors in your relationship to open your space of communication, you have to give it some time.
Right. We don't become relationship masters overnight, right? Takes a
Well,
lot of practice, a
some
lifelong of
some
practice.
people don't, but
Okay.
no, just kidding. It takes a lot of time and practice and intention in order to put into new behaviors. But part of it goes back to potentially working on yourself through
Mhm.
reading or working with a coach or working with a therapist and having that pointed out, or you actually having some awareness about yourself, some observation about yourself.
Mhm.
And you're saying, I'm having a hard time communicating. Matter of fact, I'm not really communicating at all. All I'm doing is indirectly
Mhm.
communicating, not with my words, but with my actions.
Right. Or backwards
Yeah.
way of asking. Well,
Backwards way of
yeah.
asking.
Well, this has
Right.
been really helpful, I think.
Well, it's been enjoyable talking about this because we both know how it can impact us.
Mm.
And I've participated in this behavior in my life, and it's not something that I want to be known
Mhm.
for. I'd rather be known for being upfront and honest.
Right.
And
Mhm.
as we read in our faith, speaking the truth in love.
Mm.
And I think that's an important thing for us to leave with here. Hey, drop us a line, drop us a comment. We'd love to hear from you. And we're here to help you win life's trifecta.